Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you're joining us from. So we'll get started in a few minutes. Right. Good morning, everyone. Let's talk about NetOps and SecOps automation and how we can help in our journey. This is a second webinar and the topic. We are going to add a few more learnings that we have seen with the customers and that we have been able to enable the customers. So we will talk about that as well on top of the strategies that we recommend and that we have seen customers implement, and we'll discuss further. Couple of housekeeping tasks. There is a chat window, so if you have any questions anytime during the webinar, you can type it in there and we will address that at the end of the webinar, so that that we have added some buffer time so we can discuss those questions in detail. And all the participants will be listen-only mode, so you can chat with us or talk to us using the chat window. Our moderators will be handling that as well. Okay, so a little bit quick introduction about AppViewX. We acquired our first customer in 2010, and we acquired it in Seattle. Our primary focus is NetOps and SecOps, and we help enterprises transform to the new digital transformation era that's happening, where IT is the whole idea of IT is being redefined. AppViewX is primarily a management and automation and orchestration platform, and our focus is automating network and security services in brownfield and greenfield in a more hybrid and multi-vendor heterogeneous environments. And majority of our customers are Fortune 100, all the financials, insurance, retail, pretty much on all the verticals, and we are pretty strong in the financial industry. Well, we'll go over a couple of agenda topics. We'll look at how we need to optimize operations to drive digital business. Now, what we have seen is technology is shifting from a supporter to a driver for businesses. Right? We'll look at that a little bit more in detail. We'll look at how you can get started on NetOps and SecOps automation in your enterprise or in your environment. We will talk a little bit about AppViewX and how it can help you jumpstart the process. And we'll also talk about some customer use cases and some automation use cases and orchestration use cases as well. We'll allow some time for questions so that we can address them at the end of the session. Optimize operations. Now, what does this mean? Now, with the digital era, the businesses have to rethink the way they do things. It's either disrupt or be disrupted. Now, in this, the business need to be dynamic and they should be able to tackle new changes and challenges that is been thrown around them. This requires all the different departments in the business to be working together, and especially the IT to be aligning with the business to basically drive the value to the customer. Right? Earlier, IT was more of a supporting the business. Now, enterprise has to rethink the whole approach, which involves people, process, and technology. When we talk about people, there is a completely different set of people that is needed who will think about, who will think strategy and uh, work on architecting these processes, which would help automate those day-to-day tasks. From a process perspective, you need to be able to define new process, which is more standards based, which is more streamlined, so that it helps manage the whole environment and the whole deployments and the business in a seamless, optimized way. From a technology perspective, we should look at how latest technology can be deployed with least amount of overhead, least amount of complexity, in other words. So where you can use the technology, but not the complexity that surrounds it or comes with it. One of the key things in doing all these is to provide an agile environment. Agile, but at the same time stable. So these are like an oxymoron, right? In traditional business, where a change was usually mapped with an outage. If you were to do a, a postmortem on an outage, it more than majority of the cases would be due to a change. So we need the environment to be agile so that the changes can be implemented quickly, but at the same time be stable. And how can we do that? You know, where we provide an agile and at the same time a stable environment is what we need to look at. Right? Now, we'll look at when we look at NetOps and SecOps, we need to look at how it is done today and what it's going to be tomorrow. Now, today meaning it could be today for some of the business, some might be already in the transformation, right? Depending on which level the businesses are in the transformation, it is different for different people. When I say today, it is the existing or traditional approach. It is more tactical deployment or tactical approach to NetOps and SecOps. It's more technology focused. There are people who are technology focused. There is more specific teams which manage specific technology, and it basically supports the business for whatever requirements that they would have. They support the business requirements by implementing those changes. Majority of them are manual method. There is a manual review process, manual implementation process, and there is a manual design process. It is pretty siloed as well. So each team does a specific task. They do that specific task really well, right? The success depends on how good the team, how good the expertise is, and how well they are able to manage and regulate themselves. So that's how it is, which is good. But again, that is how it is supporting the business today. And then there is a periodic delivery. There is a certain set of change windows that you would have within a year. In my previous life, whenever there is a major project that we used to plan for, we would take the number of change windows in a year, break it down, and the project management team and the program management team would sit and plan those change windows for what could be done at what time. So our change windows for the whole year would be pre-booked pretty much based on the project timeline. Now, if there is a one-off change, if there is a change where there's a change freeze, where there's a major outage, or there is a DDoS event, or any of those major events which causes a change freeze, throws the whole project out of balance, right? Because it's well crafted, pretty defined periodic delivery process, right? It's more like the waterfall type of process that we have in application development. Now, tomorrow, or where we want to be, right, or where we want to move towards, is a more strategic approach, right? More strategic approach to basically the whole IT to be business focused. More than supporting the business, we should look at driving the business, enabling the business, right, so that they can go help the customers deliver whatever they're looking to deliver in a better and a pretty quick way. And then the only way to do that is to embrace automation. So when we embrace automation, the whole approach of a periodic delivery and the whole approach of errors in implementation goes away, right? And instead of being siloed, it should be more focused on business value, right? It is across the team, cross-team oriented instead of a siloed team. And this enables an agile delivery. So the whole paradigm shift happens in that aspect. Right? Now, what are needed for this digital transformation? We spoke about people, process, and technology, right? So from today, as we move to tomorrow, right, currently, we need to shift from CLI and scripting utilities that are used today. Right? Most of the automation and most of the deployments are done with scripting. Now, we need to enhance that. We need to enable that. But at the same time, we need to move towards a more intent-based, policy-based deployment model, where we get the intent from the application team and then convert that to a more business intelligence or business intelligence, and convert that to a deployment model or a standards-based deployment model. And focus on more on automation programmability of the systems that we implement in the environment. And look at new tools, automation and analytics tools, which gives you visibility and which gives the business visibility into what they are doing, right? So that we can enable them to do more stuff. Now, what are the challenges, right? Why are we not doing it? Why is we know this is where we want to be, but what are the challenges in getting there, right? In getting to that endpoint? One of the challenge is the cross-team collaboration. As I mentioned earlier, the teams are more siloed today. Now, if we were to implement a NetOps and SecOps automation, which basically travels through multiple teams, multiple silos, getting that collaboration is a challenge. And that is one of the challenges that we need to address using the NetOps and SecOps automation as well. And the other challenges, which is forcing us to move to NetOps and SecOps, is increasing workloads. One of our customers, they were presenting, the value that they got out of the NetOps SecOps automation. It was pretty amazing what the value that they got out of it. They were able to do 3 times more work with the same amount of people, meaning the workloads have increased, doubled, or tripled, or quadrupled, but the team size has not grown to the same level. It's the same team that has to handle the increase in compute and application explosion that is happening in industry, but the number of people are not exploding. It's the same teams. So either you adapt an automation approach or uh, integrated approach, orchestration approach, or you slog and add more number of hours, which is practically not possible, right? And then flat to declining budgets. So the budgets keeps management looks at optimizing the cost, and the budgets keep constrained or rather reduced, but at the same time the workloads keep increasing, for the users. The other challenge which is forcing them is lack of visibility. Now, with all these siloed deployment models and with more applications coming in, any issue or any breakdown in those chains, in the different infrastructures, has an effect on the application. And the more integrated environment, the more complex environment, the more number of applications, then the more visibility is a challenge. So it becomes longer to troubleshoot. And then manual errors. So when there is increasing workloads, declining budget, less people doing more work and doing it manually, obviously that's going to lead to manual errors, right? So these are the business challenges which are driving NetOps and SecOps automation. And that this is basically, it's more than what do you call, a visionary approach. It is more of a necessity, right? Where the business has to do this, otherwise they're going to be overwhelmed with things. Now, what is the solution for all these? Is automation. Now, with automation, we bridge the skill gaps between other teams, and then we address the challenges using an automation tool or integrated automation tools. The key thing is when we enable, NetOps and SecOps automation, the teams see the value, and the teams are able to work together a lot more cohesively when they see the value. And Gartner talks about this in pretty detailed reports, where automation sort of is the to move to the digital transformation era, to be a leader in the digital transformation era. Automation is one of the key drivers to do that. So how do we get started? NetOps and SecOps automation. Where to begin? How to start and where to focus, right? Now, there are two approaches. One is a pretty drastic approach, or rather, where a greenfield approach, where I would say, okay, my legacy systems and legacy processes are there. I'm going to build a greenfield process and greenfield deployment, and then build a completely new process to handle automation in that environment. So anybody who wants to use that will go through that new process. That is one approach, but then the large amount of traditional deployment model to migrate over to greenfield is going to take a while, and showing the value into the new environment is also going to take a while in that approach. Now, when you look at cloud, and if you compare that to cloud, public clouds, and implement a private cloud integrated environment, now you could do that in certain aspects, but in an enterprise, to adapt to that, right, is going to be a challenge. So that's where a hybrid approach is needed. The second is to focus on the existing deployment and look at how we can deliver business value by focusing on the end-to-end user experience that internal customers are achieving, right? And automation, the whole process of automation is very specific to each enterprise. And what works for one might not work for the other, right? You have to identify and embrace the right approach which works for you. And it depends on where it is initiated and how easy it is to drive change in the organization. There are a whole other parameters to this as a whole. Now, to get started, right, we need to look at the workloads, do a discovery of what all is in there, right? The changes that go in. Look at how the infrastructure is segmented into different environments. Analyze how each interact with each other, so that we get a good mapping of stuff. And the other important thing is you need to simplify and standardize. We'll talk about each one in detail. And enable self-servicing, and then use that to iterate and add incremental value, and then focus on orchestration. Now, when we say identify workloads, in any enterprise, there's going to be a diverse set of workloads. We need to first discover all those. Basically, the ITSM is where I would start. Right? You can look at the change requests that are getting deployed across the board, and then we can map out on the top number of changes that come in, right? Periodic changes that come in. And then we can make a list of all the change requests, all the workflows that is done manually, and the time-consuming, error-prone, and the ones that cause the most outages. We capture that, right? And we look at how we can prioritize them. Now, in those, we have to look at the ones which we can address easily, where we could start easily, right? Because if you were to take a pretty difficult approach and look at automating that could take a while, right? And the value that you derive from it will take a long time to show up. But if you take the top 10 heavily requested changes, and then of those, maybe address the top 5, right? Automate that actually frees up the workload for existing teams, and that actually helps focus on more things and then address them as well, right? And identifying that is one of the important tasks, and that's where we should start, and that's what we've seen customers start as well. The second one is we need to look at how the infrastructure is segmented, how the network is segmented, what are the multiple layers involved, how are the multiple teams interacting with each other, and what are the dependencies in implementing or automating the change between an ADC change versus a DNS change and a firewall change. How are they interlinked? Identifying those cross-team collaborations and taking the ones that we can address easily to start off with, and the ones that are the number of changes are at a high level. Next one is simplify and standardize. This is another important aspect. Now, when you standardize could mean just a naming convention, deployment configurations. What we have seen our customers do is they decide on a standard set of approaches. Let's say there are 5 standard offerings. They tell their internal customers, if you were to pick any one of these 5, you will get it within an hour. Anything else is going to take the regular time. The regular time could vary from anywhere between 2 days to 2 weeks. That's what we've seen, right? Now, the moment you enable that, 9 out of 10 people pick the standard offerings, right? And they make it work. They might not need the additional capabilities bad, or they might start off with the standard offering and then look at doing a more streamlined custom deployment. This sort of helps simplifying the whole deployment a lot and also reduces the time to maintain the complex environment. Once standardized, you can look at the one-off changes that are coming in, and then if that needs to be filtered, and then you can add an additional standard approach or a reference implementation for that as well. This works on a per service offering basis. So you're not trying to boil the ocean. You're taking one specific piece and then focusing on standardizing that and then extending it to others. And then look at orchestrating the whole everything together. So this one important key piece that we have seen work really well and reduce a whole bunch of overhead with existing teams. Enable self-servicing. Now, once you're standardized, you can then give them the capability, right? Again, the same approach, right? What we have seen customers do. I'll give you this. You can self-serve yourself. You don't have to talk to anybody. You can buy your own stuff. Just fill this form. It'll be done in an hour. If you want this done, you need to talk to this guy, that guy, and then have the review, have the change, all those things, and implement. Now, this sort of helps them to be agile and error-free because it's a standard deployment, and all the change control and the whole process behind it, since it's automated, makes it easier to implement. And this sort of is a first step to move to a full-fledged automation solution. This is sort of an entry point to it. This also enforces compliance in the organization, enforces standard deployments, and helps maintain and monitor the number of blocks or the number of templates that gets implemented in the environment. Right? It also helps fine-tune those templates as well. Now, the whole automation is an iterative process. Right? You start small, you add a few templates, and then you look at how that is consumed and what are the out-of-the-box offerings that you have, and what are the custom requirements that come in, and then you fine-tune it, add more to it, and maintain those things, right? So that your focus is now not a day-to-day process, a more strategic thought process. So you elevate the existing teams from thinking tactical to thinking strategic, right? And doing very specific iterative fine-tunings to the process so that you are enabling the end customer, the end user, to consume this agile process, agile deployment model as a whole. Once that is done, then you can then focus on orchestrating those services across multiple applications, multiple siloed offerings. Now, there is no resistance until you deploy, until you get to this level, because each of the individual teams until now have been focusing on their area. They've been able to standardize, they have been able to automate, and they've been able to see value. Now, when you come to an orchestrated deployment, all you need to do is just tie them together. Now, you still have those individual processes going to individual teams, right? They are reviewing it, approving it, and all that. Just that there is a thread which sort of connects them together for an application deployment. So what is needed for doing all these? You need a tool, right, that can automate individual tasks for individual silos, for the NetOps, network services, and also for security services. You need one that has a streamlined workflow, which sort of is able to mimic what you do today manually, to replicate that or repeat that in a template, which could be automated with the same steps that you would have, which is as close to as you do manually, but through automated approach. And also one which can impose change controls and have change reviews to be reviewed and implemented. Also, another one which another important key thing in that is which reduces the risk in this whole process. And to be successful, it should work across multiple vendors. You don't want a tool which only supports one vendor. You're basically pigeonholing yourself, or rather, you're locking yourself in with that vendor. And then provide visibility across the board, right? Across all the different vendors, so that the end team is able to consume that better. Now, this is again a Gartner article, or Gartner talks about it a lot more, where there is a huge synergy between NetOps and SecOps. Even though it is a completely different team or different thought process, there are a whole bunch of tool sets which sort of overlap between what those functions are. Now, if we are able to leverage those tools which have an overlap, which is able to support both, it makes it easier on the orchestration side. And it actually also enables you to optimize budgets and avoid different deployments and different tool sets for different teams. This is one area that is new, that we have seen getting more attention and more adoption. Now let's talk about AppViewX platform. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm just going to talk about the highlights and talk about more about the business use case of an orchestration of one of our customers, more of a case study. So AppViewX platform, there is a user interface, a self-service user interface, and also an API interface. Both consume the same API, same REST API, the backend. So it could be an orchestration system, other orchestration system, or other service management systems and all that, or it could be our own UI, which is simple, intuitive. It goes through the same gateway, API gateway, and API gateway is where we enforce the whole security, load balancing, and since it's microservices, the load balancing across the different services and all that, routing and all that. Then there is an abstracted data model, which abstracts the business intelligence to the vendors, right? And the vendor plugins are the ones which talk to the end devices. The vendor plugins have understand the capabilities of the vendor, take those intent, and then talk to those individual devices and configure them. This is on a high level what we do and how the platform works. And it's horizontally scalable. Each component can be scaled up or scaled down according to your needs. A quick snapshot of technology alliances. This is a growing list, and we are never able to keep it up to date with the latest offerings that we provide, because it's plugin based. We can build plugins pretty quickly. So it sort of shows the breadth, the width and breadth of length and breadth of what we support, and integrate with all the different ITSM and all the different infrastructure tools from a SecOps and NetOps perspective. We'll talk about a representative use case, an orchestration use case, as to how they've been able to integrate with a multi-vendor environment. So this customer started off with implementing point solutions, and then extended it to an orchestration layer where the end user consumes it using our API interface through another orchestration system. And they also have the same capability to use our UI to request this change. What our system does is it takes that info, that intent that he has filled in for an application. It basically goes to QIP to get an IP allocation for that application. It could be for the VIP, it could be for the servers, it could be for the virtual IPs or virtual servers that is getting deployed, and it basically goes and configures in F5 a local traffic configuration and global traffic configuration. And based on the IP that it received, it actually generates the firewall rules needed for that. And to create the local traffic with SSL termination or re-encryption, it will talk to DigiCert, get the certificate. It will generate a CSR, talk to DigiCert, get the certificate, implement it on F5, configure that. So this whole multi-step process is implemented with a simple workflow with the change management integrated and implemented. With that, come to the end. So I will answer the questions that have come in, and there are a lot more customer deployment use cases, a lot more integrated use cases which we have done, right? I kept a chart just to touch upon one which sort of addresses most of the different systems that needs to be touched when you need to deploy. And from a SecOps perspective, there are cases where we talk about WAF, where we implement an integrated WAF solution and integrated a firewall operation solution, a certificate operations, PKI related. And from a network perspective, all the network services that come with it, we're able to integrate and automate that. Okay, there's a question from one of the participants. I have a huge library of Python scripts. Why should I buy an automation tool? It's a very good point. Now, if you are using Python scripts to automate, right, that is where, you know, to manage and maintain that across multiple vendors, across multiple versions, is where it's a challenge, right? Meaning, if you're able to do that continuously, it's great, right? But then what we have seen is after a while, it becomes a challenge to maintain and manage it. We have seen vendors who have done that, and it is, if you have that expertise in-house, and if you have the team which focuses on doing that, which is great, what we provide is a more hybrid approach. What we are saying is, you can use our workflow, you can use our integration with all the vendors and all that, but you can build automation using our tool with Python scripts. You can write Python tasks within it to integrate. So we sort of give you that capability to customize, and we support the underlying workflow, the underlying tool, and also certain tasks that you have built so that it makes it easier to manage. So we sort of elevate what you get out of those Python scripts to an additional level so that it's a lot more manageable and a lot more compartmentalized, in other words, and versioned for each of those scripts that you would have. Okay, there's another question. What are the security devices supported by AppViewX? I pulled up the slide, so I can quickly talk about it. We support WAF, web application firewalls, ASM modules and all that. And we support firewalls, the next-gen firewalls, Fortinet, Juniper, Cisco SA, Palo Alto, all the major firewall vendors. We support, from a security device perspective, what else we support? I mean, obviously the PKI, we are major, major vendor in that space. We automate the certificate management end-to-end, from a client certificate, server certificate, device certificate, all that. So we automate that. We are adding IDS, IPS, and other integrations as well, man in the middle, and all that. Right. Any other questions? I'll just wait for a minute. See if there are more questions. Right, there's one more question. Do AppViewX have built-in Python scripts, or most of those have to be individually built? So we ship out of the box templates. We ship out of the box tasks. We also have a Git where we publish our integrations. Not all are Python. We also write our own in Java. So we do ship some Python scripts inbuilt as a sample that you can use, and we published it in Git as well, so you can reference them and you can leverage them also. And we continue to publish more, and we're building a community portal where you can exchange the scripts across and enable the community support. Another question, does AppViewX have some features like this as a base for my automation efforts? Auto discovery, performance fault monitoring, cross-platform compatibility, periodic backups. Yeah, I mean, we have a whole bunch of out-of-the-box features that is available for automation. So what we have done is we have looked at what customers do, right? And most of the tasks that they do, we have been able to give an out-of-the-box solution to it. But as I said, one that works for one enterprise or one customer doesn't necessarily work for another. So we have the capability to customize, and customizing is easy. The users can do it themselves, or we can help them do that. So yes, you can get out of the box value from an automation perspective. You can also enhance it by adapting or rather modifying it to apply to your specific environment as well. Right. All right. I think that's all the questions I have so far. Okay. I guess that's it. Thank you everybody for joining, and look forward to working with you to do a lot more SecOps and NetOps automation in your environment and others as well, and to listening to your experiences on NetOps and SecOps automation. Thanks. Bye.